A fresh start gone wrong. Riley Montgomery stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of Preston and Associates, watching the Chicago skyline catch the first rays of morning sun. Her reflection showed what she wanted the world to see: tailored navy blazer, hair pulled into a flawless bun, and eyes that meant business. At 28, she had just been promoted to lead architect, the youngest in the firm's history. She had earned every single inch of that title through late nights, perfect presentations, and one unbreakable rule: keep emotions out of the workplace. The elevator chimed behind her. Riley turned, expecting her assistant, but instead found herself face to face with a man who looked like he had just survived a windstorm. His dark blonde hair stuck up at odd angles, his tie was crooked, and he was juggling a briefcase, a rolled-up blueprint, and what appeared to be 3 different coffee cups. "Sorry, excuse me, coming through," he muttered, trying to navigate past her without dropping anything. Riley stepped aside, one eyebrow raised. "The coffee station is down the hall to the left." "Thanks, but these aren't all mine." "Well, one is mine. The other 2 are peace offerings. First day jitters, you know." He flashed a smile that was somehow both nervous and confident. "Jackson Hayes. I just transferred from Seattle. Structural Engineering Division. Riley Montgomery. Lead architect." She kept her voice cool and professional. "Welcome to Chicago. Try not to spill those before you meet everyone." The elevator incident. 20 minutes later, Riley was reviewing blueprints in her office when her assistant, Bree, knocked urgently. "Riley, Mr. Preston wants you in the main conference room. The Henderson project presentation moved up to this morning. Apparently, they're here now." Riley grabbed her tablet and portfolio, her mind already racing through the presentation points. The Henderson project was massive, a 40-story mixed-use building that would define the city's new waterfront district. She had spent 3 months perfecting every detail. She rushed toward the elevator, mentally reviewing her notes. The doors were closing when she heard someone call out, "Hold the elevator." Her hand shot out instinctively, and the doors reopened. Jackson Hayes stumbled in, now carrying a large coffee, a box of pastries, and his briefcase. He was slightly out of breath. "Thanks. Big meeting. Apparently, I am supposed to assist on some major presentation." "Henderson something?" Riley felt her stomach drop. "You are on my team." "Your team?" Jackson looked at her properly for the first time since entering the elevator. "Wait, you are the Riley Montgomery? The one whose designs won the Henderson bid?" "Yes, and you are apparently my new structural engineer. Did anyone brief you?" "I got the email at 7 a.m. this morning. I have been trying to catch up ever since." The elevator lurched upward. Riley was about to respond when it happened. The sudden movement made Jackson lose his grip on the coffee cup. It flew through the air in what felt like slow motion. Riley tried to duck, but the lid popped off mid-flight, sending hot coffee cascading down the front of her pristine white blouse and cream blazer. She gasped, more from shock than pain. The coffee was hot but not scalding. However, her carefully constructed professional image was now soaked in dark brown liquid. "Oh no. Oh no, no, no." Jackson immediately set down everything else and pulled off his own jacket. "Here, take this. I am so sorry. This is literally the worst first impression possible." Riley looked down at herself, then at the elevator panel. They were still 3 floors away from the conference level. Her mind calculated rapidly. She could not show up to the most important presentation of her career looking like she had lost a fight with a cappuccino machine. "We have 2 minutes before this elevator opens," she said, her voice tight with controlled panic. "Give me your jacket." An unexpected partnership. Jackson handed over his suit jacket without hesitation. It was too big, but Riley slipped it on, quickly buttoning it to cover the coffee stain. She caught a faint scent of cedar and something fresh, maybe mint. She pulled the pins from her bun, letting her dark hair fall to help hide the disaster underneath. "Your shirt is now visible," Jackson said, pointing to where coffee had dripped onto his sleeve. "I know. We will have to work with it." Riley met his eyes. They were a warm brown, currently filled with genuine distress. "Can you actually do structural engineering, or did Seattle send you here as a prank?" Despite everything, Jackson laughed. "I can do my job. I am good at it, actually. Just apparently not at carrying coffee." The elevator dinged. The doors opened to reveal the executive floor. Riley straightened her shoulders, transformed her panic into confidence, and stepped out. "Then follow my lead, do not speak unless spoken to, and for the love of architecture, do not spill anything else." The presentation that changed everything. The Henderson Group executives were already seated around the massive glass conference table. Riley recognized Amanda Henderson immediately, the CEO whose vision had started this entire project. Next to her sat 3 board members and their chief financial officer, all looking expensive and slightly impatient. Ms. Montgomery, Amanda Henderson stood, extending her hand. "Thank you for accommodating our schedule change." "Of course, Mrs. Henderson. We are thrilled to present our vision for your waterfront development." Riley shook her hand firmly, grateful that Jackson's jacket actually looked intentionally oversized and fashionable. "This is Jackson Hayes, our structural engineer on the project." The presentation began smoothly. Riley walked them through her designs, showing how the building would capture natural light, maximize views, and integrate sustainable technology. Her confidence grew with each slide. This was her element, where she shined. Then came the questions. "What about wind load calculations at that height?" one board member asked. "Chicago winters are brutal." Riley opened her mouth, then realized she had left those specific calculations in her office. Her mind raced. She could generalize, but these people would know if she was faking details. Jackson cleared his throat softly. "If I may," he said, stepping forward. He pulled out his tablet and projected a detailed structural analysis onto the screen. "I ran preliminary calculations based on Ms. Montgomery's designs. The tapered design she has created actually reduces wind resistance by approximately 30% compared to a traditional rectangular structure. When we factor in the reinforced core system and the strategic placement of mechanical floors, the building will handle winds up to 150 miles per hour with minimal sway." Riley watched as he walked through complex engineering principles, making them sound simple and logical. He pointed out details in her designs that she had not even fully explained yet, showing how the aesthetics and structure worked together perfectly. He was not just competent. He was brilliant. The Henderson Group executives leaned forward, engaged and impressed. By the time Jackson finished, Amanda Henderson was smiling. "That is exactly the kind of integrated thinking we were hoping for. Ms. Montgomery, Mr. Hayes, I think we are ready to move forward to the next phase." After the victory. 2 hours later, Riley found herself back in her office, finally able to change into the emergency blouse she kept in her desk drawer. Jackson knocked on her open door, holding 2 bottles of water. "Peace offering number 2, he said. "Sealed bottles this time. No spilling possible." Riley could not help the small smile that escaped. "Thank you for saving that presentation. You designed an incredible building. I just explained why it would not fall down." Jackson handed her a water bottle. "For what it is worth, I really am sorry about the coffee. And the terrible first impression. And probably the next dozen mistakes I will inevitably make. You redeemed yourself." Riley took a sip of water. "Those wind load calculations were impressive. You did that this morning?" "I might have stayed up most of last night reviewing everything I could find about the project once I got the email." Jackson rubbed the back of his neck, looking sheepish. I wanted to be prepared. For a moment, they just looked at each other. Riley felt something unfamiliar stir in her chest. It was not just gratitude. It was recognition. Here was someone who understood the work the same way she did, who saw the beauty in stress calculations and load-bearing walls. "Jackson," she said, her professional mask slipping back into place. "We are going to be working closely together on this project. So I need to be clear about something. I have a strict policy about workplace relationships. This is a professional environment, and I keep it that way. No complications, no drama, no distractions." Jackson's expression shifted, becoming more serious. "Understood. Strictly professional. Got it. Good." Riley set down her water bottle. "Welcome to Preston and Associates. Try to keep the coffee disasters to a minimum." As Jackson left her office, Riley turned back to her windows, looking out at the Chicago skyline. She told herself the flutter in her stomach was just leftover adrenaline from the presentation. Nothing more. But somewhere in the back of her mind, a small voice whispered that Jackson Hayes might be the one person who could make her question every rule she had ever made. Late-night revelations. 3 weeks had passed since the coffee incident, and Riley found herself thinking about Jackson Hayes far more than she should. He had proven himself invaluable on the Henderson project, catching design flaws before they became problems and offering solutions that made her work even better. But it was more than his professional competence that lingered in her mind during quiet moments. It was the way he brought her tea without being asked when she worked late. The way he laughed at himself when he made mistakes instead of deflecting blame. The way his eyes lit up when they solved a particularly challenging engineering problem together. Riley had built her entire career on control and discipline, but Jackson was slowly dismantling her carefully constructed walls without even trying. Tonight, the office was nearly empty. It was past midnight, and they were the only 2 people left on the entire floor. The Henderson presentation was in 3 days, and they still had to finalize the structural integration reports. Riley sat at the large drafting table in the design studio, surrounded by blueprints and empty coffee cups. Her eyes burned from staring at screens all day. "You need a break," Jackson's voice came from behind her. She turned to find him holding 2 containers of Chinese takeout. "When was the last time you ate actual food?" Riley glanced at her watch and realized she could not remember lunch. "I had a granola bar around noon, I think. That was 14 hours ago. Come on." Jackson set the containers down on a clear section of the table and pulled up 2 chairs. "We are taking a 30-minute break. The blueprints will still be here when we get back." The smell of lo mein and orange chicken made Riley's stomach growl audibly. She gave in, accepting the container Jackson offered. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes, the only sounds coming from the city below and the gentle hum of the building's ventilation system. "Can I ask you something?" Jackson said finally, setting down his fork. "Why architecture? What made you want to design buildings?" Riley was surprised by the question. People usually asked about her achievements, her awards, her rise through the firm. Nobody asked about the why behind it all. "My grandmother was a seamstress," she said slowly. "She immigrated here from Taiwan with almost nothing, and she built a successful tailoring business. I used to sit in her workshop and watch her create beautiful dresses from nothing but fabric and thread. She told me that creating something that did not exist before was the closest humans could get to magic." Jackson leaned forward, genuinely interested. "So you went from dresses to skyscrapers?" "Same principle, bigger scale. Buildings are like garments for human activity. They need to fit the people who use them, protect them, make them feel something." Riley found herself smiling at the memory. "My grandmother died when I was 16, but she taught me that creating something meaningful was worth any sacrifice." "Is that why you work so hard? The sacrifice part?" Riley's smile faded slightly. "I work hard because I have to. This industry does not forgive women for being less than perfect. One mistake, one distraction, and suddenly you are not dedicated enough or focused enough. I have seen brilliant female architects sidelined because they fell in love with the wrong person or got too emotionally involved in office dynamics. Jackson was quiet for a moment. That sounds lonely. It is practical. Riley's voice came out sharper than she intended. Sorry. I just mean that I have worked too hard to let anything jeopardize this career. I get it. Jackson started cleaning up the empty containers. For what it is worth, I think your grandmother would be proud. You create magic every day. The confession. The moment hung between them, charged with something Riley did not want to name. She stood abruptly, turning back to the blueprints. We should get back to work. But Jackson did not move. Riley, can I tell you something? And you can tell me to shut up if you want, but I think it needs to be said. Her heart started beating faster. Jackson, do not. These past 3 weeks have been the best professional experience of my career, he continued, standing up to face her. Working with you challenges me to be better. Your designs inspire me. Your dedication pushes me to match it. But Riley, it is not just professional admiration anymore, and I think you know that. Stop. Riley held up her hand, but her voice was shaking. You cannot say these things. We have rules. You have rules, Jackson corrected gently. And I have respected them. I have kept everything professional. I have not crossed any lines. But I cannot pretend that I do not feel something when we work together. When you get excited about a design solution. When you tuck your hair behind your ear when you are concentrating. When you smile, which you do not do nearly enough. Riley felt her carefully constructed defenses cracking. You do not understand what you are asking. 5 years ago, I was engaged to another architect at my old firm. David Chen. He was talented, charming, and everyone loved him. We kept our relationship secret at first, but eventually, it came out. Suddenly, every project I won was because of him. Every promotion was because we were sleeping together. Never mind that my designs were better or that I worked twice as hard. I was just David's girlfriend riding his coattails. Jackson's expression darkened. That is horrible. It got worse. Riley's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. The firm landed a huge project, and we both applied to lead it. I had more experience, better qualifications. But they gave it to David. When I confronted the partners, they said they could not risk the appearance of favoritism if they chose me. My relationship with David had made me professionally toxic. What happened? I left the firm. Ended the engagement. Started over here at Preston with one promise to myself: never again. Never let anyone have the power to diminish my work. Never let feelings compromise my career. Riley met Jackson's eyes, and she could see the pain there, mirroring her own. So you see why I cannot do this. Why we cannot do this. Not because I do not feel it too. Because I do, and that terrifies me more than any failed project ever could. The confession hung in the air between them. Riley had not meant to admit her feelings, but there they were, exposed and vulnerable. Jackson took a step closer, and she did not back away. I am not David, he said softly. I would never take credit for your work or let anyone diminish what you have accomplished. And maybe it is naive, but I think we could keep this separate. We are professionals. We can be colleagues during the day and something more after hours. It does not work like that. People find out. They always find out. But even as Riley said the words, she found herself leaning toward him, drawn by a gravity she could not resist. Then let them find out. Jackson reached up, gently tucking that strand of hair behind her ear that he had mentioned earlier. You are brilliant, Riley. With or without me. Nobody could ever take that away from you. His hand lingered near her face, and Riley found herself turning into his touch. It had been so long since she had let anyone get this close, since she had let herself want something beyond the next project or promotion. "This is a terrible idea," she whispered. "Probably the worst," Jackson agreed, his thumb tracing her jawline. "We will regret it." "Maybe." "Jackson, I'm serious. This could ruin everything. Or it could be the best decision we ever make. The point of no return." Riley closed the distance between them, pressing her lips to his. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, both of them testing boundaries they had been carefully maintaining for weeks. Then Jackson's hand slid into her hair, and Riley's arms wrapped around his neck, and suddenly, the kiss deepened into something urgent and inevitable. They broke apart, both breathing hard. Riley's carefully styled bun had come undone, and Jackson's shirt was wrinkled where she had grabbed it. They stared at each other, the weight of what they had just done settling over them. "My apartment is 10 minutes away," Jackson said, his voice rough. Riley knew she should say no. Should go home alone, wake up tomorrow, and pretend this never happened. Instead, she found herself nodding. "Let me grab my things." They left the office separately, maintaining appearances even though the building was empty. Riley drove her own car, following Jackson's taillights through the quiet Chicago streets. Every red light was an opportunity to turn back, to reclaim her careful control. But she kept driving. Jackson's apartment was small but neat, decorated with an engineer's practical eye. The moment the door closed behind them, they came together again, months of tension finally released. There were no more words, no more rules, just the two of them discovering each other in the darkness. Afterward, Riley lay in Jackson's bed, her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat slow to normal. His fingers traced lazy patterns on her shoulder. The rational part of her brain was already screaming warnings, listing all the ways this could go wrong. But another part, a part she had kept locked away for 5 years, felt something she had almost forgotten: happiness. "Stay," Jackson murmured against her hair. "Please stay tonight." Riley knew she should leave, should maintain some boundary. But the warmth of his body and the genuine care in his voice made her weak. "Just tonight," she whispered. "Tomorrow, we figure out what this means." "Tomorrow," Jackson agreed, pulling her closer. The morning after. Riley woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and immediate panic. She sat up, finding Jackson still asleep beside her, one arm stretched across where she had been lying. He looked peaceful, younger in sleep, and heartbreakingly vulnerable. What had she done? All her rules, all her careful boundaries, shattered in one night. Riley slipped out of bed as quietly as possible, gathering her scattered clothes. Her hands shook as she dressed. This was exactly what she had sworn never to do again. Running away? Jackson's sleepy voice came from the bed. Riley turned, her professional mask slamming back into place even though she was standing in his bedroom wearing yesterday's clothes. This was a mistake. Jackson sat up, the sheet pooling around his waist. "Do not do this. Do not run just because you are scared." "I am not scared. I am practical." Riley's voice was cold, defensive. "We work together. We have a major project due in 2 days. This complicates everything." "It does not have to." "Yes, it does." Riley found her shoes, slipping them on with shaking hands. "Last night was a lapse in judgment. We were tired, stressed. It cannot happen again." Jackson got out of bed, pulling on pants as he walked toward her. "Riley, look at me." She did, and the hurt in his eyes almost broke her resolve. "We can make this work," he said quietly. "I know you are scared. I know what happened to you before. But I am not him. We are not them. We could have something real if you would just let yourself believe it." Riley wanted to believe him so badly it physically hurt. But 5 years of protective walls did not crumble in one night, no matter how perfect that night had been. I cannot risk my career again. I just cannot. I am sorry, Jackson. I truly am. But this ends here. She walked out of his apartment, making it to her car before the tears started. Riley sat in the driver's seat, gripping the steering wheel, and let herself cry for the first time in years. She cried for the girl who had believed love and career could coexist. She cried for the happiness she had felt in Jackson's arms. And she cried because she knew she was throwing away something precious out of fear. But fear had kept her safe for 5 years. Fear had gotten her promotions and respect and success. Love had only brought pain and professional destruction. Riley started her car and drove home, already planning how she would face Jackson at work on Monday. Professionally. Distantly. Safely. She told herself it was the right choice. But deep down, in the place where her grandmother's voice still whispered about magic and creation, Riley wondered if she was making the biggest mistake of her life, the cold professional. Monday morning arrived with the weight of inevitability. Riley sat in her office an hour before anyone else arrived, preparing herself for the day ahead. She had rehearsed this moment all weekend. She would be cordial but distant. Professional to the point of coldness if necessary. The Henderson project presentation was in 2 days, and she could maintain this facade for 2 days. After that, she would request that Jackson be reassigned to a different team. It was the logical solution. The safe solution. So why did it feel like she was ripping out something vital? Jackson arrived at his usual time, and Riley watched through her glass office walls as he set down his briefcase at his desk. He looked tired, with dark circles under his eyes that matched her own. Their gazes met across the office space, and Riley forced herself to look away first, turning back to her computer screen without acknowledgement. She made it until lunch before he cornered her. Riley was in the design studio, reviewing printouts of the final presentation boards when Jackson walked in and closed the door behind him. "We need to talk," he said. "There is nothing to talk about. We have a presentation to prepare." Riley kept her eyes on the boards, not trusting herself to look at him. "Riley, you cannot just pretend Friday night did not happen." "I can, and I am. It was unprofessional, and it will not be repeated. Now, if you will excuse me, I need to finish these reviews before the client meeting." Jackson was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was tight with controlled emotion. "Fine. If that is how you want to play this, we will keep it professional. But you are lying to yourself if you think what we have is just about work." He left the studio, and Riley finally let herself breathe. Her hands were shaking so badly she had to set down the papers. This was for the best, she told herself. This was protecting both of them. So why did it feel like the worst thing she had ever done? The jealous observer. Trevor Walsh had been with Preston and Associates for 8 years, always one step behind the promotions he felt he deserved. When Riley Montgomery had been made lead architect over him, he had swallowed his resentment and waited for her to fail. Instead, she had succeeded brilliantly, making his own work look mediocre by comparison. But Trevor was observant. He noticed things. Like how Riley and Jackson Hayes looked at each other when they thought no one was watching. Like how they both arrived at work exhausted on Monday morning. Like the tension that crackled between them in meetings, the kind of tension that had nothing to do with architectural disagreements. Trevor had been in the office late Friday night, working in a conference room down the hall from the design studio. He had seen Riley and Jackson leave separately but within minutes of each other. He had not thought much of it until Monday when their dynamic had completely changed. Now, sitting in the break room on Tuesday afternoon, Trevor scrolled through his phone and thought about opportunities. If Riley Montgomery was violating her own sacred workplace relationship policy, that was valuable information. The Henderson project presentation was tomorrow. After that, he could have a quiet conversation with Mr. Preston about his concerns regarding professional conduct in the architecture division. It was not personal, Trevor told himself. It was about maintaining standards. If Riley could not follow her own rules, she did not deserve to be lead architect. The fact that her downfall would create an opening for his own advancement was simply a fortunate side effect. The breaking point. The Henderson project presentation went perfectly. Amanda Henderson and her board were thrilled with the final designs, the structural integrity reports, and the projected timelines. They signed the contract that afternoon, making it official. Preston and Associates would be designing and overseeing construction of the most significant waterfront development in Chicago's history. Mr. Preston called an impromptu celebration in the main conference room. Champagne appeared, and the entire architecture division gathered to toast their success. Riley stood near the windows, accepting congratulations from colleagues while carefully avoiding looking at Jackson, who was trapped in conversation with Trevor Walsh on the other side of the room. "Wonderful work, Riley," Mr. Preston said, appearing at her elbow with 2 champagne flutes. He handed her one. "This project will define your career. And partnering you with Hayes was brilliant. You two work together like you have been doing it for years." "Thank you, sir. Jackson is very talented." Riley kept her voice neutral, professional. "I am thinking of making the partnership permanent. Hayes on structures, you on design. We could pitch you as a team for future major projects. The clients respond well to your dynamic." Riley's stomach dropped. A permanent partnership with Jackson? Working together on every major project? She could not do that. Not when every meeting was torture, not when she had to actively stop herself from reaching for him, not when his presence made her question every protective rule she had built. "Actually, sir, I was going to suggest that Jackson might be better utilized on the Riverside Commons project. Ben could use the structural support, and I think Jackson's skills would be valuable there." Mr. Preston frowned. "But you two are so effective together. Why break up a winning team?" "Because I am falling in love with him, and it terrifies me. Because every day I have to pretend I do not want him is killing me. Because I would rather be alone than risk my heart and career again." "Just thinking about resource allocation," Riley said smoothly. "But of course, the final decision is yours." Across the room, Jackson was watching her with an expression she could not quite read. Trevor Walsh whispered something to him, and Jackson's jaw tightened. Whatever Trevor had said, it was not friendly. The confrontation. The celebration wound down after an hour. Riley escaped to her office, closing the door and letting out a breath she had been holding for what felt like days. She had survived the presentation, survived the forced proximity to Jackson, survived Mr. Preston's suggestion of a permanent partnership. Now she just needed to make it through the rest of the week, and then she could request a vacation. Some distance to clear her head. A sharp knock interrupted her thoughts. Before she could respond, the door opened, and Jackson walked in, closing it firmly behind him. His expression was thunderous. "Did you really just try to get me reassigned?" he demanded. "That is a personnel decision that does not concern you," Riley said, standing behind her desk like a barrier. "And you need to knock before entering my office. Stop hiding behind your title. I am not one of your subordinates, Riley. I am your equal, and you know it." Jackson crossed the room, stopping on the other side of her desk. "Trevor Walsh just spent 20 minutes hinting that there is gossip about us. He practically accused me of sleeping my way onto this project. So I will ask you again, are you trying to get rid of me?" Riley felt heat rush to her face. "Trevor does not know anything. Then why are you acting guilty? Why are you pushing me away? Because you are scared, or because you actually regret what happened between us?" "Both." "Neither. I do not know." Riley's control finally cracked. "I cannot do this, Jackson. I cannot be the woman who loses everything because she fell for a colleague. I cannot watch my work get diminished because people think I am sleeping my way to success. I cannot go through that again. So instead, you will go through your entire life alone? Never letting anyone in? Never taking any risks? Jackson's voice rose to match hers. That is not protecting yourself, Riley. That is just existing. There is a difference between living and just surviving, and you have been just surviving for 5 years. The words hit like a physical blow because they were true. Riley had been surviving, not living. Playing it safe, avoiding connection, building walls so high that no one could ever hurt her again. But those same walls kept out everything good too. What do you want from me? She whispered, all the fight draining out of her. Jackson walked around the desk, and this time, Riley did not back away. He cupped her face gently with both hands, tilting it up so she had to meet his eyes. I want you to take a chance. On us. On something real. Yes, it is risky. Yes, it could get complicated. But Riley, what we have is worth fighting for. I have never connected with anyone the way I connect with you. Professionally, intellectually, emotionally. You challenge me to be better, and I think I do the same for you. Is not that worth the risk? Riley felt tears threatening. What if it falls apart? What if we ruin everything? Then we deal with it together. But what if we do not? What if we actually make this work? What if we build something as strong and beautiful as the buildings you design? Riley thought about her grandmother, about creating magic, about the difference between surviving and truly living. She thought about the happiness she had felt in Jackson's arms, the connection they shared over blueprints and late-night conversations, the way he looked at her like she was both brilliant and beautiful. She thought about David, about how that relationship had made her feel small and dependent. But Jackson was nothing like David. Jackson celebrated her successes, supported her vision, and never once tried to diminish her accomplishments. He saw her as an equal, not a competitor or an accessory. I am terrified, Riley admitted, her voice breaking. So am I. Jackson's thumb brushed away a tear that had escaped down her cheek. But I would rather be terrified with you than safe without you. Riley closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. Then she made her choice. She kissed him, soft and slow, pouring 5 years of fear and loneliness into that kiss, and then letting it all go. When they broke apart, she was smiling through her tears. Okay, she whispered. Okay, we will try. But Jackson, if this gets complicated, if it affects our work or the respect we have earned, we reevaluate. Deal? Deal. Jackson grinned, that same smile that had charmed her on his disastrous first day. So does this mean we are officially dating? We are officially something, Riley laughed, feeling lighter than she had in years. We will figure out the details as we go. The resolution. The next morning, Riley did something she had never done before. She arrived at work holding Jackson's hand. They walked through the lobby together, took the elevator up side by side, and entered the architecture division as a united front. The office went quiet. Everyone stared. Riley saw Trevor Walsh's smug expression falter into confusion. She saw Bree's delighted smile. She saw Mr. Preston watching from his office with a raised eyebrow. Riley cleared her throat, her voice carrying across the open space. I know I have been very vocal about workplace relationship policies. I still believe in maintaining professionalism and ensuring that personal connections do not compromise our work. However, I also believe in being honest and transparent. Jackson and I are dating. This will not affect the quality of our work or our commitment to this firm. If anyone has concerns, my door is always open. Mr. Preston emerged from his office, walking toward them with an unreadable expression. Riley held her breath, waiting for the reprimand, the disappointment, or the reassignment. Instead, he smiled. About time you two figured it out. The entire office has been watching that tension for weeks. Just promise me you will keep delivering work like the Henderson project, and I could not care less who you date." Riley felt Jackson squeeze her hand as relief washed over them both. Around the office, people returned to work, the drama already losing its appeal. It was not the scandal she had feared. It was just life, messy and complicated and real. Trevor Walsh approached as the crowd dispersed. "So much for your strict rules about workplace romance," he said with false sweetness. "I guess they only apply when it is convenient." Riley met his gaze steadily. "No, Trevor. They apply when fear is making decisions instead of reason. I was wrong to make such a blanket rule. People are not distractions. Connections are not weaknesses. I have learned that the hard way, and I am grateful for the lesson." She walked away before he could respond, Jackson at her side. They had work to do, buildings to design, and a future to build together. It would not always be easy. There would be challenges, complications, and moments of doubt. But Riley was finally ready to take the risk. 6 months later. Riley stood at the groundbreaking ceremony for the Henderson project, watching as Amanda Henderson turned the first shovelful of earth. The sun was setting over Lake Michigan, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Next to her, Jackson squeezed her hand, and she leaned into him, letting herself enjoy the moment. Her phone buzzed with a text from Bree. "Mr. Preston wants to see you both Monday morning." "Something about a proposal for a museum project in Seattle?" Riley showed the message to Jackson, who grinned. "Seattle? That is where this all started for me." "Seems fitting to go back together," Riley said, tilting her face up for a kiss. As they stood there, watching her design begin its transformation from blueprint to reality, Riley thought about her grandmother's words about magic and creation. She was creating magic every day, not just in her buildings, but in her life. She had learned that the strongest structures were not the ones built from rigid rules and isolation, but the ones built on connection, trust, and the courage to be vulnerable. The coffee spill that had started it all seemed like destiny now. One clumsy accident, one moment of chaos, and everything had changed. Riley had never imagined that Jackson Hayes would not only become her professional partner but her life partner as well. She had been so focused on preventing heartbreak that she had almost missed out on happiness. But not anymore. Now, with Jackson by her side and a city full of buildings waiting to be designed, Riley Montgomery was finally living instead of just surviving. And it all started with a spilled cup of coffee and the courage to take a chance on love.